Presenter today is Dean Strasser. He is the Vice President of Insurance Services and Operations here with National Crop Insurance Services. He leads a staff of professionals with a combined 200 plus years in the crop insurance industry and 55 years of agronomic research experience. His department is responsible for the development of crop hail policy and loss instructions based on agronomic research and works directly with the Risk Management Agency to develop and improve federal crop insurance underwriting and loss adjustment procedures and provide input to the development of new programs. Dean has been the primary subject matter expert on whole farm revenue protection at NCIS and has presented on the topic at multiple meetings since the program was made available in 2014. Dean has 21 years of service to NCIS and 25 plus years of overall insurance industry experience. At NCIS, Dean has held the position of Director of Field Services, been a member of Training and Education Department, and began his NCIS career as a crop insurance specialist. Dean holds a Bachelor of Science in Agriculture from Kansas State University, majoring in agricultural economics. He's written informational papers on rainfall index programs, livestock programs, and the 2014 Farm Bill changes for the Crop Insurance Today magazine published by NCIS. He also authored the Crop Adjuster Study Guide for the NCIS Crop Adjuster Proficiency Program, also known as CAP. He continues to develop and present training materials for the crop insurance industry. His favorite thing about crop insurance is it keeps him connected to agriculture and people who deliver crop insurance to farmers. The relationships developed in his time at NCIS are his most cherished possessions. Graduating from college in the 80s with a degree in agriculture and finding a job in agriculture or going back to the farm was a tough row to hoe. The 80s were not kind to agriculture, and he was out of agriculture for almost 10 years until joining NCIS in 1997. One of Dean's favorite things is snow skiing and would like to spend a lot more time on the golf course. He's found also that cruises are a great way to travel because mobile phones don't work in the middle of the ocean. Great point. All right, well, I'm going to hand it over to Dean to get started on the forage seeding presentation.
Well, thank you, Molly. Today we'll just get into forage seeding and give you the background on it and how it actually works for you. So the objective of the seeding presentation today is to help create an understanding of the type of coverage that's provided and the commodity insured under the forage seeding policy. We'll try to teach you about learning the important dates and the causes of loss that are covered for forage seeding and what your duties are in the event of a damaged or a loss of an established stand and how this will work will be discussed. So just a reminder here, we do have a crop insurance basics webinar that is available that covers the basics of crop insurance and the background on crop insurance. Locate that webinar to go to the link that we've contained in this slide, cropinsuranceinamerika.org. Click on webinars, Pennsylvania, webinars, and all of the webinars that have been recorded thus far can be found there. So an acronym refresher, you've probably seen this in some of our other webinars, but not all of these acronyms I'll use in this presentation, but you may encounter them in discussion with your agent in the course of applying for coverage. So as you read down the list, some of the very important ones that you'll want to remember are the acreage reporting date. This is the date that you report the acreage that you've actually planted. AIP is an acronym for the approved insurance provider or the company from which you have obtained insurance from. Beginning farmer and rancher, catastrophic risk protection, otherwise known as CAT. The contract change date, this is a date that the risk management agency is supposed to, or whenever they make a contract change in the policy, that's the date in which they must have that available to your agent for review. Crop provisions, simply CP, crop year, CY, and then federal crop insurance is an acronym that will be used throughout many of the presentations, FCI, and then Federal Crop Insurance Corporation is the organization under which the Federal Crop Insurance Program is organized. NAP, some of the programs make references to the FSA Non-Insured Disaster Assistance Program. NASS, that's the National Agricultural Statistics Services. Some of the risk management agencies' policies or crop insurance policies rely on NASS data to establish yields as a benchmark for your coverage. This program, I'll talk about some NASS data as far as what's going on in the state of Pennsylvania. Notice of loss, no practice specified. When you see in the actuarials, we'll talk about practices a little later on. NPS means there's no practice specified, so any practice, whether it be irrigated, non-irrigated, are all covered practices that you can insure your crop under. RMA-RO, those are the regional offices of the Risk Management Agency, and so on and so forth. One acronym we'll use a little bit in this presentation is SP. That's the Special Provisions of Insurance. So moving on, just a little background, a little review on basic crop insurance. A person type, when you're applying for coverage, you'll be asked this question. And what this means is a person type is the entity you operate as for your sales and marketing. For example, if you sell as an individual and are married, you insure as an individual spousal account. Person type. If you do business as a partnership with an employer identification number, you should insure under the partnership name and report the employer identification number that accompanies the partnership. As long as you stay within the guidelines of the crop insurance program, it is helpful if you insure as the same tax entity with the same tax ID as you would use for other government programs, particularly the Farm Service Agency. On the slide, you see the most commonly used person types. Several other person types are available, so work with your agent if you are a person type that's not on this slide. A Social Security number is unacceptable for an individual and spousal policies, while an employer identification number is expected for partnerships, revocable trust, and limited liability corporations or companies. Substantial beneficial interest. Spouses are presumed to have a 50% interest in the insured. An SBI example here would be there are two partnerships. Each has a 50% interest in the insured. Each partnership consists of two individuals, each with 50% share of the applicable partnership. So as you can see, we're doing some math here. Each individual is considered to possess a 25% interest in the applicant insured. Therefore, both the partnership and the individuals would have a substantial beneficial interest in the applicant insured. The spouses of the individuals would not be considered to have a substantial beneficial interest unless the spouse was one of the individuals that comprised the partnership. Conservation compliance. The AD 1026 form is a form filled out at the Farm Service Agency offices. Why is it important that I check your status before you purchase a policy? It is important that you check your status at FSA because you may not be eligible for a premium discount if you don't have an AD 1026 on file with the Farm Service Agency. If you are not eligible for a premium discount and purchase a policy, you will be responsible for all of the premium cost. On average, the USDA's Risk Management Agency pays 55 to 62% of the premium costs. Check with your crop insurance agent or your local FSA county office to confirm your AD 1026 status before the sales closing date for the policy you wish to purchase. Because this is first and foremost an FSA program, it is ultimately your responsibility to find out your status. So we're going to walk through a little bit about units. This will be important for forage seeding because they do have units available. So you will automatically qualify for basic units. A basic unit, unless otherwise specified in the crop provisions or special provisions, is all insurable acreage of the insured crop in the county on the date coverage begins for the crop in which the insured has 100% share in the crop. So 100% share of crop includes share as an owner, operator, and or land that is rented for cash, a fixed commodity payment, or any consideration other than a share in the crop. If you have less than 100% share in the crop and land is owned by one person and operated by another person on a share basis, a crop share with each different landlord, tenant, or sharecropper is a separate basic unit. Reverse roles will also qualify for separate basic units. Varying percentages of shares within a basic unit do not qualify for separate basic units. For an example, you, the insured, owns land and rents land from 5 landlords, 3 on a crop share basis and 2 on a cash lease basis. The insured would be entitled to 4 basic units, 1 for each crop share arrangement, and 1 that combines the 2 cash leases and the land owned by the insured. Forage seeding allows additional basic units for spring planted acreage and fall planted acreage. And as you can see on the slide, the catastrophic risk endorsement allows only a basic unit structure. So breaking basic units down further, we do have available for forage seeding optional units. Optional units are allowed by section or sectional equivalent or by FSA farm number. Depending on the crop and the special provisions, you might be able to subdivide these optional units further by irrigation practice. Although the optional unit structure will require higher premium, it allows for losses to be paid on a more granular level than basic units. There is a smaller land area involved in determining damage and production. Because forage seeding is only covering the crop for the initial year of establishment, and the dollar per acre coverage is not determined from your production history like other programs, production reports are not applicable to the crop. So as on the slide, you can see a couple of things that I've lined out, and that's what differentiates forage seeding from other crops that have optional units. So I wanted to put together some data based on RMA's summary of business that's available online on their website. You can go in and check a summary of data for any of the crops that are insured. But as you can see here, we've got a 10-year history from 2009 to 2018. Talks about the policies, how many policies are being earned or earning premium in Pennsylvania, the number of acres that are under insurance. So in there in the bottom line, 674 acres were insured in Pennsylvania for a total of $172,053 of insured liability. NASS data, just a little background on how much of the insured potential is out in Pennsylvania. This is NASS data based on a survey of producers in Pennsylvania. And the data item there, hay and haylage, and the critical thing here is alfalfa, is the acres planted. And it appears that according to NASS, there were 110,000 acres of hay and haylage planted to alfalfa in 2018. This slide shows the acres harvested. And as we get further into the year and we talk about forage production, this slide will be of value because we do have forage production coverage for the established forage after we establish coverage under forage seeding. This chart shows all the types of hay and haylage acres harvested based on NASS surveys. So this may include other things other than alfalfa, such as perennial grasses and clover and different things like that. So I wanted to walk through the insurance cycle again, starting in the upper right quadrant of this. The application for insurance is submitted to your insurance agent. If all the information needed is provided and after review by the company is acceptable, then insurance attaches when the application is accepted or the crop is planted. Late and prevented planting provisions are not applicable to forage seeding. In the event the planted crop is damaged, you must provide notice of loss within 72 hours of your initial discovery of the damage. The company will perform an inspection, and if the damage qualifies, you will receive an indemnity. The last step in the process is if there are any changes that are made to the policy, where in the upper left-hand corner, they are done so by RMA by the contract change date. So let's dig into the policy a little bit, some of the information that can be found there. Point out some of the information here about forage seeding. Forage seeding is a dollar plan of insurance. So essentially, it protects against a declining value due to the damage that causes a yield shortfall. In forage seeding, we're going to talk about a plant stand in terms of normal plant stands and how many plants per square foot are needed for an established stand. Amount of insurance is based on the cost of growing a crop in a specific area, and a loss occurs when the annual crop value is less than the amount of insurance. We'll get into that a little bit later. Maximum dollar amount of insurance is stated in the Risk Management Agency's issued actuarial documents, and you will select a percentage of that maximum dollar amount equal to either the catastrophic level of coverage or additional coverage levels. So on your application, must include your name, address, tax ID, and substantial beneficial interest, along with your selected plan of insurance, county, crops, coverage level, the price, optional endorsements you may want to include on the crop, and more. You need to plan to spend some time with your agent completing the form, and one missed box can have a big impact on your coverage. If you produce crops in 2 counties, you can choose to insure one county but not the other. Different coverages can be selected in each county, but remember, you must insure all acres of a crop in the county in which you have a share. When the company receives your properly completed and timely submitted application, it will process your application and send you a summary of coverage and a set of policy documents. Once the application is accepted, you can't cancel the policy the initial crop year. So when we come down to, you've planted the acreage of your forage crop. So on your acreage report, you're going to report the date the crop was planted, what your share in the crop is, where it's located, and the farming practice used, whether it be irrigated, non-irrigated, or any applicable practices that might be available. And if applicable, the types, varieties must also be reported. This information is used by the insurance provider to establish the amount of coverage and premium for the crop, and you must meet all policy deadlines or coverage may be denied. On this slide, we've talked about a couple of things here: spring seeded acreage and fall seeded acreage, which we'll define later. But these important dates, June 15th and November 15th, are the dates that you must have your application completed according to the practice. So what is the insured crop forage seeding? Well, it's important to understand that the special provisions of insurance are higher in the order of priority, and the special provisions modify the crop provisions for your specific county. So on this slide, we have what the crop provisions state, and then we've gone to a county in Pennsylvania to see what our special provisions state. The crop provisions provide the basic level of understanding. So planted perennial alfalfa, perennial red clover, perennial grasses, or other mixture thereof, or other species as shown in the actuarial documents. So we go to the actuarial documents to see what our special provisions tell us. For a county in Pennsylvania, forage seeding includes any alfalfa or forage mixture containing at least 50% alfalfa, clover, bird's foot trefoil, or any other locally recognized and approved forage legume species by weight. So that's very important to understand. And if you've got a mixture that you're planting that doesn't fall under this particular listing of legumes, you want to talk to your agent and provide the documentation that supports that that's a locally recognized forage variety of legume. Continuing on with the insured crop, just what are we covering? But not unlike other federal crop insurance policies, the insured crop will be all of the forage in the county for which a premium rate is provided by the actuarial documents and for which you have an insurable share that is planted during the crop year or replanted during the calendar year following planting. To establish a normal stand of forage, more on that later, so forage is not grown with the intent to be grazed or not grazed at any time during the insurance period, and it is not interplanted with another crop except nurse crops unless allowed by the special provisions or the written agreement. So in essence, what this is saying is we are ensuring the establishment of your forage crop to get it grown, and then once it's established and it's gone through the policy year, then that's when forage seeding stops. So this slide defines what spring seeded and fall seeded forage crops are. So a spring seeded crop is a forage crop seeded before July 1st. The final planting date in most Pennsylvania counties is May 10th. So for a fall seeded crop, a forage crop seeded after June 30th, and the final planting date is August 31st, excuse me. Where is forage seeding available in Pennsylvania? This map shows all of the different counties in which forage seeding is available. I've included a website address, that's RMA's actuarial information browser that you go to look up the county actuarials and the special provisions specific to your county. Here's a look at that page. So I've clicked on that link. This is the page that comes up. And simply what you'll do is you'll click on the line number 1 for forage seeding, go down, identify the crop year, commodity year that we're going into. And the insurance plan, there will only be one plan available for forage seeding, which is the dollar amount of insurance. If you're looking at corn or something else, you might see yield protection, revenue protection with the harvest price exclusion, and so on and so forth. And then finally, select the state and select your county in which you're growing your crop. Talked a little earlier about coverage levels and premium subsidies and how the dollar plan coverage is designed. So this slide indicates that you may only select one coverage level and the corresponding amount of insurance designated in the actuarial documents for the applicable type and practice for all the forage seeding in the county that is insured under the policy. The amount of insurance you choose for each type and practice must have the same percentage relationship to the maximum amount of insurance offered for each type and practice. For example, if you choose 100% on this chart, look at the 85% coverage level of the maximum amount of insurance for a specific type and practice, you must also choose 100%, the 85% coverage level in this case, of the maximum amount of insurance for all other types and practices for your forage seeding. So I put there in a box beside the premium subsidy chart, reference maximum dollar amount of insurance is $383. The maximum dollar amount of insurance you can apply for at the 85% coverage level is $325. And the minimum dollar amount for buy-up coverage is $192. And the catastrophic dollar coverage amount is $106. The insurance period. When does the insurance period begin for forage seeding? It begins when the crop is planted, and it ends at the earliest of, and that's key to understand that the earliest of the following items listed here on the slide are what determine the end of the insurance period. So total destruction of the insured crop on the unit, initial harvest of the unit if a late harvest date is not listed in the special provisions, first harvest after the late harvest date if a date is specified in the special provisions. And remember, earlier we learned that forage production is not designed for harvest, it's the establishment of the stand. Final adjustment of a loss on the unit, or if you abandon it, or the date grazing commences on the insured crop, or May 21st of the calendar year following the year of seeding for spring planted acreage. And remember, that's the crop that we have planted before May 21st, so a year later. October 15th of the calendar year following the year of seeding for a fall planted acreage. So for example, for a spring seeded crop, we seed May 1st of 2019, May 21st of 2020 is the calendar year date for the end of the insurance period. Just for an example. Causes of loss that result in the loss of or the failure to establish a stand of forage occurring during the insurance period. So multiple perils are covered here. Adverse weather conditions, fire, insects but not damage to insufficient or proper application of pest control measures, plant disease but not damage due to insufficient or improper application of disease control measures. So just stop here a little bit on these two items. If there are insects or plant disease damage that's going on, and you've taken all of the measures that are recommended, taken sufficient care to care for the crop to keep it viable, any damage from these causes will be covered. Wildlife, earthquake, volcanic eruption, or failure of the irrigation water supply if caused by an insured peril that occurs during the insurance period. So what are your duties in the event of a loss? Well, you must maintain representative sample of the crop at least 10 feet wide and extend the entire length of the field in the unit. The samples must not be harvested or destroyed until the earlier of the company's inspections or 15 days after tilling of the balance of the unit is completed. You also must give us written notice, or the company written notice, if during the period before destroying the crop on any fall planted acreage that is damaged, you decide to replant the acreage by the spring final plant date. So what is replanting? We introduced a concept here. Replanting is performing the cultural practices necessary to prepare the land by replacing of the forage seed and then replacing the forage seed in the insured acreage with the expectation of producing a normal stand. We'll talk about what a normal stand is in a few slides. Replacing new seed into an existing damaged stand, which results in a reduced seeding rate from the original seeding rate, will not be considered replanting. In some parts of the country, they might call that sweetening the stand. Replant payments are allowed if the insured fall planted acreage is damaged by an insurable cause of loss to the extent that less than 75% of a normal stand remains. Just a normal stand is a minimum of 9 live plants per square foot in the special provisions. And that's one of those things that from year to year, you must check to see what that number might be in the special provisions, because it could change. It must be practical to replant as determined by your company. The company gives you written consent to replant, and such acreage is replanted the following spring by the spring planting date. Now, I must point out that this replant payments are only available for fall planted, for fall seeded acreage. You must replant spring planted forage at your own expense if it is practical to replant, and your company will decide if it's practical to replant. So acres having an established stand will be those acres which have at least a 75% normal stand or 9 plants per square foot, whether they're abandoned or put to another use without the AIP's written consent, are damaged solely by an uninsured cause, or is harvested and not reseeded. So in other words, if you've gone out and abandoned the crop, didn't notify your company, or you've destroyed it without notifying the company is going to consider that those acres had an established stand. So the appraisal process. Appraisals use a stand count method and what they do is they toss a measuring device into representative areas and count the number of live plants within the sample areas. I don't know if you can see the background of this slide very well, but this is some adjusters at an adjuster school throwing a measuring device up in the air, or it kind of looks like a hula hoop, but it's measured to certain specifications to get a number of square feet within the representative sample area, and they'll do that in several places around the field and take the counts and average them out. So some policy reminders. Forage seeding includes any alfalfa or forage mixture containing at least 50% alfalfa, clover, bird's foot trefoil, or any other localized, recognized, and approved forage legume species by weight. A minimum of 9 live plants per square foot will be considered to be a normal stand for loss adjustment purposes. And one thing I failed to mention, as under that first policy reminder, you probably will want to make sure that you keep the documentation of the seed that you purchased with all of the information verified, so that the company can verify that at least 50% of the seed is alfalfa or one of those other legumes that are listed there. So let's look at a claim example. The insurance company has come out and they've inspected the acreage of your spring seeded forage, and you have a 65% coverage level, or $249 per acre. And we have 40 acres that we find have less than a fully established stand. So they have 8 or fewer plants per square foot. So our insurance amount per acre is $249. We have 50 acres of spring seeded forage. So that multiply those out, and we have $12,450 of protection in force for those 50 acres. Now, we found that 40 acres have damage and qualify for an indemnity payment. So our insurance amount in force, and we take the number of acres 40 minus 50 leaves us with 10 acres that have a fully established stand. So we have 2,490 acres of production to count. Those are our good acres. So we take our protection in force, subtract our production to count, or our good acres that we don't have an indemnity on, and that leaves us with an amount of loss of $9,960 to pay for the other 40 acres that have damage. So that's a simple claim example. That's how forage seeding works. So if you have fall seeded acreage and you qualify for a replant payment, the replant payment just basically builds upon the previous slide. A replant payment is simply an amount of the replant payment will be 50% of the determined indemnity determined in section 13 of the policy. We just did that on the previous slide, but no replanting payment is allowed on acreage for which one replanting payment has been allowed. So you only get one replant payment during the crop year. So here we have that same basic unit of 50 acres of fall seeded forage. We had spring seeded on the previous slide, but now we've got fall seeded. We have the same coverage level, same dollars per acres. We have 40 acres that have less than a fully established stand. So those are the acres we're concerned with to replant on. Amount of insurance per acre is $249 times our acres gives us our protection in force for all 50 acres. Our insurance amount in force, again, 249 times the acres that have the established stand gives us our production to count. Just mirrors the previous slide, come up with the same numbers, protection in force, production to count, and our amount of loss for an indemnity would be $9,960. But for purposes of a replant payment, we simply multiply that previously determined indemnity by 50%, and our replant payment for those 40 acres would be $4,980. So that pretty much sums up how forage seeding works. Again, forage seeding is to protect the establishment of a forage stand so that it can be established and ready for the next step of the process, and then you'd insure it under forage production. I'll leave it open at this time for any questions. I see that no questions have been asked. So just a refresher, make sure that you're aware of the Risk Management Agency's website and all the resources that are available. This is also the place that you can go to find an agent. At the top of the page, we have in a little red box a link, find an agent. You click on that, it brings up this page, and then under the agent locator, under the first paragraph there, locate an insurance agent, there's a link there, the agent RMA agent locator, and then you'll select your state, and it will show who's authorized to write crop insurance in your state. I want to thank everybody, the Risk Management Agency, Penn State, Pennsylvania Department of Agriculture, and the Risk Management Agency for their help in this, and thank you for listening today.